Welcome, my friends. I'm Sarah Jo Strawberry, and may I just say, you are looking fabulous today. And I am very glad that you are here today. I'm always glad to see you, but especially today, because this is going to be a very special one. This theory addresses something that a few people have asked me about, and that I have not had an answer for, and it's something that I've, for my own sake, wanted to have an answer for. But this actually comes courtesy of my little sister, Julia. Julia, say hi to the people.
Hi, people.
So yeah, this is her theory, that with her permission I am sharing here, and it has to do with Professor Sharp's deceased partner. Now, I have added my own little spin and bits to this theory of Julia's, but the main big headline of this theory belongs to her, but we will get to that in a bit. Very little is revealed in Hogwarts Legacy about Professor Sharp's former Auror partner, but what if they were there in front of us the whole time? Now, what exactly do we know about Professor Sharp's partner? Not a whole lot. The game doesn't give us a lot of information. They are only mentioned in our first side conversation with Professor Sharp, when he tells us about how he got his injury and that he and his partner had tracked a suspect to a ship docked in Scarborough, and thinking they had gone undetected and that the suspect was working alone, they boarded the ship and were ambushed, leading to Sharp's injury and his partner being killed, and Professor Sharp takes responsibility for this mistake. Outside of the game, there are a couple other mentions of his partner. In an unused line for Professor Sharp's second assignment, where we learn the spell Diffindo, he mentions that Diffindo can come in handy in unexpected ways and potentially save one's life, and tells the story of a time that he and his partner were tied up like Christmas hams and left out for the Horntails, and Diffindo allowed for them to cut themselves free and live another day. In the book The Art and Making of Hogwarts Legacy, there is also a brief mention of Professor Sharp's partner, simply that Professor Sharp was injured and his partner killed in the same incident, basically repeating what Professor Sharp tells us in that first side conversation. So yeah, very, very little we learn about Professor Sharp's partner. We don't even get any pronouns. They are simply referred to as my partner, Professor Sharp's partner. So that does leave some room to make a lot of guesses and to theorize about who this could be. My question is, and this was also what was brought up by Julia, could it be that his partner was a double agent of sorts and maybe faked their death? In the memo we find in Professor Sharp's office, it mentions that the Aurors being addressed will be watching over Borgin and Burke's and joining those already posted there due to increased activity at the shop. Could this be how he and his partner first met, and his partner was one of the Aurors already assigned to Borgin and Burke's? Perhaps his partner was secretly assisting those who were causing the increased activity at Borgin and Burke's and using being an Auror as a cover to allow them to continue their dark deeds. Hence the increased activity at Borgin and Burke's, that maybe his partner, being a double agent, assisting these dark wizards, would help lead to this increased activity and a need for more Aurors, that the ones already there, for some reason, can't stop this activity. There's also something about the way Professor Sharp talks about taking responsibility for this mistake that led to his injury, to his partner's death, that struck me as odd, and almost seems like he's gaslit himself into believing that he is responsible. He says that he is the one who thought this suspect was working alone, and made the choice to board the ship. But what if his intel was initially correct, and his partner tipped off the suspect and was working with them, and basically took part in this ambush, and the suspects helped Professor Sharp's partner fake their death and get away, and somehow leave some sort of evidence that would lead Professor Sharp to taking the blame for this and just be so distracted by thoughts of how did I go wrong, how did I get this wrong, to piece together that something was off and his partner isn't actually dead. So, okay, if his partner faked their death and is actually still alive and is a dark wizard working with dark wizards, and we've maybe seen them before, who is it? Now, this is, again, the big headline that I fully credit to my sister Julia, and when she texted this to me, it got wide-eyed, and I might have gasped, because I know my husband was like, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" But her theory is that Professor Sharp's partner is Theophilus Harlow. To read a bit of what she sent me, what if they were partners, and he found out that his partner was alive after believing for a time that he was dead? Or maybe things didn't work out so well at the end of their partnership, and he thought of his partner as dead to him. I thought that was interesting, maybe that he did find out that Theophilus Harlow, if Harlow was his partner, that he was basically turning against Professor Sharp, putting him in danger, and going against their joined mission of stopping dark wizards, and Harlow was dead to him, and still out of a sense of loyalty, he never ratted him out. Now that part I don't, obviously with what I've presented so far, I'm less inclined to believe that, though I do think it's interesting. And do think it could be a case of he really thought he was dead, going back to what I mentioned a few moments ago. Despite being a major antagonist in the game, we actually see very little of Harlow. Mainly if you follow Natty's storyline, you'll see more of him. That's kind of where he's the main villain of that storyline. So again, a bit easy to, we have very little we know about his partner, and very little we know about Harlow. Easy to kind of group those two together, but I do think this is very interesting, and there's a bit more to it, some potential connections to Professor Sharp, but let's talk about what exactly we know about Harlow. We know that he is a member of Slytherin due to the snake on the back of his vest. He appears to be about the same age as Professor Sharp, leading me to believe that they were not only classmates, but housemates, and probably spent a lot of time together. And Harlow is a very powerful wizard and incredibly proficient in battle, much like an Auror would need to be. Now, Julia got this idea from an earlier theory I've presented on this channel before, having to do with a connection between Sharp and Harlow. And that is the letter found on the mantle of a fireplace in the Room of Requirement. The T2A letter, as I call it. And it is a letter addressed to someone only going by A, saying to meet them again in the Room of Requirement at a future date. And it comes from someone who simply goes by T. And I believe it's possible that the A that this letter is addressed to is Aesop Sharp, and the T that it is from is Theophilus Harlow. And it says in the game that this letter could have been recent or could have been from a long time ago, and maybe it came from when they were students and they went to the Room of Requirement to maybe brush up on their defensive skills and get ready to become Aurors together, or they were practicing dark magic, similar to Ominous and Sebastian in the Undercroft. And, Harlow could have posited to Sharp that they should practice dark magic so that when they become Aurors, they can have a better idea of the types of spells their enemies would use against them. But really, Harlow has had this interest in dark magic and just wanted to learn it for himself. We were also supposed to see Professor Sharp both as a student and as a young adult in the game. There are two character models in the game files of a teenage Professor Sharp and a young adult Professor Sharp. Maybe what was cut out was some sort of scene between young Sharp and young Harlow, and what led to them becoming Aurors, and for Harlow becoming a dark wizard. So while it may seem a bit odd and a bit out of nowhere, and just trying to fill in gaps of two very little known things, there are actually a lot of potential connections between the two. So yeah, that's that's really the long and short of this theory that Professor Sharp's partner isn't dead. Unbeknownst to him, it is Theophilus Harlow, who is still, not unbeknownst to him, but unbeknownst to him that he's not dead. Thank you to Julia for this theory and for allowing me to share it with everyone. Julia, do you have any final words?
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Ugh, I need to get my wand fixed. Thanks for watching. Mischief managed.
As always, let me know what you think about this theory in the comments. I always love hearing everyone's thoughts. I know I must sound like a broken record saying it every time, but I genuinely do love the feedback and conversations that come from these videos. So I really look forward to hearing what you have to say. Give the video a like, pretty please. Leave a comment, subscribe, hit that bell. Whatever it is you're supposed to say on YouTube. And I'll be seeing you in the next video. Au revoir, mon frère. And his partner was one of the Aurors already assigned to Borgin and Burkes. And despite being a major antagonist in the game, we actually see very little of Professor Harlow.